Of London, a biting wind whipped through the streets, carrying with it a flurry of snowflakes. A homeless mother huddled in her car, her tiny infant wrapped in a patchwork of mismatched blankets. The car, a beat-up old model, was parked in a deserted alleyway, its windows coated with a layer of frost. Inside, the mother's face was etched with exhaustion, her eyes filled with a desperate weariness. The baby, oblivious to the harsh conditions, let out a soft whimper, a sound that tugged at the heartstrings. What happened next would not only alter the course of their lives but would leave an indelible mark on everyone who heard their story. Before we delve further into this narrative, please share where you are reading from. Your location helps us connect with readers around the globe. And if you appreciate stories that highlight the power of human compassion, please subscribe to our channel. We have another inspiring tale to share with you tomorrow. On this particular evening, Ryan Gosling, the acclaimed actor, found himself leaving a small grocery store, 2 shopping bags in hand. The crisp air nipped at his cheeks, and the gentle rustle of wind through the bare branches of nearby trees created a soothing symphony. He tugged the brim of his beanie down a little further, a subtle gesture that betrayed his desire for anonymity. Over the years, he had honed the skill of being observant without drawing attention to himself. It was a delicate balance, a way to stay connected to the world around him without being engulfed by the constant clamor of fame. His day had been a mix of professional demands and personal fulfillment. Filming for his latest project had concluded earlier than anticipated, granting him the opportunity to attend to some personal errands. Among these was the simple act of grocery shopping, a task he found strangely grounding. There was something comforting about navigating the aisles, selecting produce, and interacting with ordinary people engaged in their daily routines. These moments of normalcy helped him navigate the often surreal landscape of his career. As he strolled through the parking lot, a flicker of movement in a dimly lit corner caught his attention. An old, weathered sedan, its paint peeling and its tires looking deflated, sat parked away from the other vehicles. A sense of unease washed over him as he noticed clothes strewn across the back seat and a pile of belongings crammed into the trunk. It was then that he saw her. A woman, her figure silhouetted by the faint glow of a nearby street lamp. She was pushing a shopping cart, her movements heavy with fatigue. Her clothes, though clean, were simple and worn, suggesting a life of hardship. As she moved, Ryan observed her, a quiet concern growing within him. There was an air of vulnerability about her, a sense of quiet desperation that resonated with him. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. With a growing sense of purpose, Ryan decided to approach cautiously. He didn't want to startle her or make her feel threatened. He simply wanted to understand, to offer help if needed. As he drew closer, he noticed that the woman kept returning to the old car, using it as a temporary storage space. The pieces began to fall into place in his mind. Could it be that this car was her home? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He had heard stories of people living in their vehicles, struggling to make ends meet, but seeing it firsthand was a stark reminder of the harsh realities some people faced. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding with a mix of apprehension and determination. He needed to know if his suspicions were correct, and if so, he needed to offer assistance. He reached the woman just as she was transferring a bag of groceries from the shopping cart into the trunk of the sedan. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice carrying a note of concern. The woman turned, her eyes widening in surprise. She took a step back, clutching the bag to her chest. There was a flicker of fear in her eyes, a wariness that spoke of past experiences. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan noticed a subtle shift in her demeanor. The mother, clearly torn between her pride and her instinct to protect her child, seemed to be losing the internal struggle. I need milk," she finally admitted, her voice almost inaudible. Ryan nodded, understanding that this small act of acceptance was a significant step forward. "Wait here, I'll be back in a few minutes." Without waiting for a response, he headed toward the supermarket. When he returned, he carried a bag of essentials, powdered milk, diapers, and a pack of wipes. The woman seemed even more hesitant than before, but she accepted the items, murmuring a quiet thank you. She held the bag carefully, as if it contained the most precious things she had ever received. As she settled the baby in the car, Ryan stood beside her. "I know it's none of my business, but if you need anything else, I'll be around." She paused, her gaze fixed on the baby. They weren't supposed to be like this," she whispered, her voice laced with a deep sadness. That sentence was more than just a lament. It was a silent cry for help. Ryan knew then that this was just the beginning. The story behind this woman and her child was about to change his life, and he was ready to face whatever came next. The following day, Ryan returned to the parking lot. The scene was much the same, but there was something different about the woman's posture. She was outside the car, cradling the baby in her arms, staring into the distance with a look that blended exhaustion and resignation. He knew he needed to approach her carefully. "Hi," he said, keeping a respectful distance. The woman looked up, surprised but less defensive than before. "You came back?" she replied, her voice carrying more curiosity than distrust. Ryan offered a gentle smile. "I said I'd be around. I hope you didn't feel pressured yesterday." She shook her head slowly. "No, it was kind of you." He sensed it was the right moment to try something more. "Can I sit?" he asked, gesturing to the nearby curb. She hesitated, but nodded. Ryan sat down, resting his arms on his knees and allowing a brief silence to settle before speaking again. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not comfortable sharing, but can I ask your name?" The woman looked at him for a moment before answering, "Emily." "Nice to meet you, Emily," Ryan said sincerely. "And the little one?" She glanced down at the baby, who now seemed calmer. "Oliver," Ryan smiled. "Oliver is a strong name. I like it." The compliment seemed to ease some of the tension in Emily. She relaxed slightly, though she still maintained a cautious posture. Ryan knew he shouldn't rush her, so he decided to share something personal. "You know, I've been through some tough times too," he began, keeping his voice gentle. "I've lost people who were my whole world. There were moments I didn't think I could keep going, but somehow I did. It wasn't easy, but I had help, and sometimes accepting help is what saves us." Emily listened silently, her eyes fixed on the baby. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Sometimes it feels like I'm alone in the world, and no one cares." Ryan shook his head slowly. "I care," he said firmly, "and I know we don't know each other, but I want to help, if you'll let me." She didn't respond immediately, but something in her expression seemed more open, more vulnerable. Later that night, while Emily slept in the car with Oliver in her arms, Ryan quietly returned to the parking lot. He carried bags filled with baby food, hygiene items, and toys. Carefully, he placed everything by the car door, along with a handwritten note for Emily and Oliver. No strings attached, just care. The next morning, when Emily woke up and found the items, her emotions were conflicted. She held the toys in her hands, her eyes welling with tears. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried so much meaning. Part of her wanted to reject everything, to hold on to the control she still felt she had. But another part of her knew this was exactly what she needed. She looked around, but Ryan was already gone. Yet, something inside her had begun to shift. The following day, Emily made the decision to talk to Ryan when he appeared in the parking lot. She called out to him before he could approach. "Thank you," she said, holding one of the bags he had left. "This means a lot." Ryan smiled. "I'm glad it helped, and if you need anything else, just let me know." Emily hesitated for a moment before speaking again. I don't usually talk about this, but..." She took a deep breath as if summoning the courage to continue. "I lost everything. My husband, my home, my life, and what happened after. It's still hard to believe." Ryan looked her in the eyes, his face serious but full of empathy. He knew she was on the verge of revealing something important, something that would be the next step in rebuilding her trust. "You don't have to rush," he said. "I'll be here whenever you're ready." Emily swallowed hard and nodded. For the first time in a long time, she felt like someone was truly willing to listen. As Emily looked at Ryan, her eyes brimming with emotion, she finally let it out. It all started when he died. My husband. After that, everything fell apart, and then something happened. Something no one would believe. Ryan leaned forward slightly, his expression calm but full of focus. He knew her story was just beginning, and that it would be deeper and more painful than he had imagined. Emily took a deep breath, clutching Oliver tightly against her chest. Her gaze drifted into the distance as if she were diving into memories she had fought to keep buried. "It all started a year ago," she began, her voice trembling. "My husband, Liam, died in a car accident. He was coming home from work. Just a regular night, or at least it should have been." Ryan stayed silent, giving her the space to continue. Emily wiped away a stubborn tear that rolled down her cheek. "When the police knocked on my door, it felt like the ground had vanished beneath me. I couldn't even process it at the time. I just remember the officer saying he didn't suffer, but that didn't matter. He was just gone." She paused, her lips quivering as she struggled to maintain control. After that, everything turned upside down. The life insurance didn't cover enough. The bills started piling up, and Liam's parents. She stopped, gritting her teeth. "They said I wasn't capable of taking care of Oliver." Ryan's brow furrowed. "They tried to take your son?" Emily nodded slowly. "They filed for custody, claiming I was emotionally unstable, and maybe they were right. I was a mess. But everything I did was for Oliver. I couldn't afford a decent lawyer, so when I realized things were turning against me, I packed up my car, took what was left of my savings, and ran to another state. I thought it would be temporary, that I'd find a job and get back on my feet." Emily continued, her voice filled with bitterness. "I found a job at a cafe. I started saving money, and for a while, it felt like I was making progress. But then a customer started harassing me. He'd say disgusting things, and one day I snapped and yelled at him. I tried explaining to the manager, but he didn't care and fired me." Ryan closed his eyes briefly, feeling a knot in his stomach. He could see the pain in Emily's eyes, each word revealing the weight she carried. "With the money running out, I got evicted. The car became our home. I tried looking for work, but it was hard with Oliver always with me. No one wanted to hire a mother who they said wasn't dedicated enough. Since then, I've been living like this, every day just trying to survive, picking up odd jobs, pushing carts, hoping no one noticed we were living here." She finally stopped, her eyes filled with tears. "And I know it's wrong. He deserves more. I should be doing better, but I'm just so tired." Ryan felt his chest tighten as he listened. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Emily," he began. "Emily," he began, carefully choosing his words. "You're fighting a battle no one should have to face alone, and no one can blame you for that." She lifted her eyes to meet his, disbelief evident in her expression. "But I should have figured it out. I should—" "You're trying," Ryan interrupted gently. "That's more than many people would do. You're fighting for Oliver every single day, and that's something incredible." Emily stayed silent, letting his words sink in. Finally, she murmured, "What do I do now? I'm at the end of my rope." Ryan looked directly at her, his determination clear. "We'll figure it out together, I promise. Wait here, I'll be back in 20 minutes. Before she could respond, Ryan stood and walked toward his car. He had a plan, and he was determined to change Emily and Oliver's lives forever. As Ryan drove away from the parking lot, Emily watched him in the rearview mirror, her heart torn between hope and fear. She wanted to believe he could help her, but life had taught her not to trust so easily. Inside his car, Ryan grabbed his phone and started making calls. He knew he needed to act fast. Whatever came next would be the first step toward transforming Emily's situation and giving her the fresh start she so desperately needed. 40 minutes later, Ryan parked back at the supermarket, his car engine still running. Emily, sitting in the old car with Oliver, raised her head at the sound. Her eyes held skepticism, but there was also a spark of curiosity. Ryan stepped out of his car and walked toward her, holding a small envelope in his hand. He stopped at a respectful distance and raised the envelope. "I got a room for you and Oliver," he said. "It's a simple motel, but it's clean and safe. You can rest there tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out the next step." Emily stepped out of her car, holding Oliver tightly to her chest. Her eyes shifted between the envelope and Ryan's face, clearly conflicted. "I can't accept this. I don't want charity." "This isn't charity," Ryan replied, his voice firm yet gentle. "It's help. We all need help sometimes. Please, let me do this for you." She hesitated, the weight of exhaustion evident in her posture. Finally, she extended her hand and took the envelope. Inside, she found a room key, a note with the motel's address, and some cash for food. She swallowed hard, feeling a mix of relief and shame. "Thank you," she said at last, her voice barely audible. Ryan smiled. "You're welcome. I'll drive behind you to make sure you get there safely." The motel room was simple, but to Emily it felt like a luxury. There was a large bed, clean sheets, and a small private bathroom. The soft yellow glow of the bedside lamp created a cozy atmosphere. She gently laid Oliver on the bed and tucked him in carefully. For the first time in weeks, he seemed to sleep deeply, free from the noise and discomfort of the car. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes welling with tears as she looked at her son. The tears began to fall uncontrollably. It was the first time in a long while that she felt a semblance of safety, a glimmer of hope. She glanced at the note that came with the key. The simple words written by Ryan echoed in her mind. "You're not alone. We're in this together." Outside, Ryan stayed in his car.